Welcome to the show. Lots to talk about today. I want to start with two things. Number one, a lesson on just the history. Once again on TikTok, I really loved having Northwest Poll Project up on TikTok. So if somebody does want to hop up either for a question or you have an important update about what you're doing to make your community better, or you have a question or something maybe to share, you're going to have to be a trusted community member, of course. We don't just hand the mic over to random people on the Ignition News or on our sister network, Rebel Radio. But I'd love to hear from someone. If the time's right, if the moment's right, let me know. We'll key that in towards the latter third of the show. But let's start out first with a couple of lessons. Number one, I just want to say thank you to everyone who supported my son, Ben. He is enrolled in a STEM school, and he's really big into 3D printing. He came to me actually with the idea of like, hey, Dad, do you think that I could sell some whistles on your store to help buy a 3D printer? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? Tell me about this. And he's familiar with the show. And he's like, well, what if we made some safety whistles and I put the word resist on them and you could put them on your store? Let's give it a try, buddy. So we did that. He actually joined us on the show on Monday. I think he did a really great job. I'm really proud of him. I do want to say big thanks to Melinda, to Catherine, to Tam, Nicole, Michelle, Meredith, and Courtney. All women. Love that. Love that for Ben, for chipping in. We are now more than halfway to Ben's goal. But in that, he learned a lesson, and I want to tell you about that. So he was overwhelmed with excitement to start printing these whistles. He's doing it at his local library right now. And he learned a very important lesson that I think translates to the work that we're doing right now, which is the importance of not taking shortcuts. So he was experimenting with his design of his whistle, and he was printing this word resist on the whistle. And he was doing the math of the designs and the CAD and the splitting and all that stuff. And he was crunching the numbers because he's at the library, right? It takes a long time. You can only use the machines a certain amount of time. So he's doing his math in his head, and he's like, well, I can print 12 whistles in 2 hours if I put the resist into the whistle, or I could print like 6 if I raise it above the whistle because of the amount of time it takes. It takes a long time. And so he chose to recess the logo into the whistle. He printed for 2.5 hours. He called me when he was done, and he's like, I printed 12 of them. I think they look really nice. And they do look really nice. Oh, look at Instagram. Apparently doesn't like talking about safety whistles, whatever. So anyways, he prints them. And I'm like, that's awesome, bud. Have you tried the whistle? Have you tried the whistle? And let's see. Dang. So he learned a very valuable lesson about experimentation, which I think we talk about a lot, ideation. But most important, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts in the work that we're doing right now. And he learned a very valuable lesson. In fact, sometimes when you take shortcuts, it ends up costing you a lot of time, energy, and effort. He lost 2.5 hours of his time, energy, and effort. But he learned from his failures. He actually has a box that he made, and he made the box. He took a Sharpie and he wrote on the box, fails. And I'm like, why'd you do that? And he's like, well, these are the ones we're going to learn from. And I think that was really powerful. There are no shortcuts. And it reminds me of what's happening and what's coming up, which is the elections, of course. It reminds me, of course, that this president tried to take shortcuts in the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, what's on the stake is not 12 PLA safety whistles, but the economy, the global world order, America's hegemony, all of this, once again, our alcoholic Secretary of Defense taking shortcuts. And every step of those shortcuts is costing us billions of dollars. It's getting people killed. It's killing children because we just shouldn't be there. Obviously, that's the most obvious statement of all. But these shortcuts have consequences. And sometimes you learn that when you're 14 years old trying to make a whistle. And sometimes you learn that as a country, realizing that we have these great big fights ahead of us. And so before I get into news, I want to transition to one more thing, which were not shortcuts. And I was thinking about people giving up and people taking time. I was reminded of Harriet Tubman. And a lot of people have a very fanciful view of the Underground Railroad and that path of liberation. Here on the show and in the Rebel Radio community, we've studied Harriet Tubman a lot. But it was not as glamorous. In fact, it was not glamorous at all. Like, you have to think of transiting slaves from the South to the North in very dangerous conditions. And Harriet Tubman had a really rigid set of rules. If a person became a liability to the collective, they could not continue on with the group. Her most famous rule, a lot of people did not know, was that no one was allowed to turn back. Once the journey began, a person returning to the plantation was a direct threat to the entire group. Why is that? Why is that a threat? Because that person could tell the owners or law enforcement or tell the people that they were captured under the threat of death. They could tell where everyone else was. And so Harriet Tubman famously carried a pistol with her. And when people became overwhelmed with fear or exhaustion, she had zero compromise. She knew that if one person returned, everyone's life was at stake. In fact, the entire network was at stake. Those people would be tortured. Those people could be killed to get the information about the Underground Railroad. And she is famously quoted as, "You'll be free or die," pointing her revolver at them. The message was simple. If you go back, they will kill you. When she got back from her first escape in Philadelphia, she spoke about the hollow nature of individual freedom when your community is still in change. This drove her decision to return repeatedly, but it also highlights the clarity she had about who she was leaving behind in the moment. "I was free," she said, "and they should be free," she said. "I would make a home for them in the North, and the Lord helping me, I would bring them all here." She viewed the people left behind as not something that she had failed at, but as the next mission and the next objective. She is misattributed as having said, "I could have freed 1,000 more only if they knew they were slaves." This is a fictionalized quote, but it summarizes the energy of her movement, and it summarizes the energy of the difficult choice that she had to make. People often say that Harriet Tubman left people behind. But the reality was, in the mission of liberation, once you committed to liberation, you have to go all the way. Because your failure puts everyone at risk. So welcome to the Ignition News, everyone. It's good to have you here. It's an important lesson to learn about failure, persistence, and learning. We have failed in our resistance in America. Let's be honest. There's an authoritarian president in charge of this country right now. We are learning every day from the resistance. We are learning how to grow stronger. We are learning how to attribute our successes, how to celebrate them. But most importantly, we understand that the people that are being left behind right now, they are not failures. They are simply the next mission. But if you think that this is just trying to stay above water until the midterms, or hoping that the midterms will bring a victory, if we have free and fair elections at all, and that somehow we'll turn it around and we'll elect someone else in 2028, and then all things are going to magically be better, you need to buckle up. This country, the world order, what's happening with the economy, the entire world order is being restructured right in front of us. And at the end of that restructuring is pain and suffering for the working class. And no election or no midterms is going to stop that. It's going to take sustained collective resistance, sustained collective reordering. We have to get our hands in this work because really, when you think about it, nobody can be left behind. If one is left behind, we're all left behind. If we allow one industry to be vaporized by AI, or if we allow one group of people, if we say, oh, well, I don't have space or energy to worry about this group or that group, then we're all left behind. We're all at risk. What's happening with trans people in the United States of America right now? If you're not talking about it openly, if you're not openly helping to stop that, to resist that, because when they succeed with one group, they will go to the next group and the next group and the next group. My final quote from Tubman. When she returned for her husband in 1851, he had found that he had had another wife. She did not beg him or linger. She decided that if he did not want freedom, she would not waste the opportunity to save those who did. Her husband, unsure of what had happened to her, had married someone else. She could have been devastated. She could have begged him to leave that person to come with. But she said, if I had reasoned this out of my mind. There was one of two things I had a right to: liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other. So much to learn from such a powerful force of liberation. Welcome to the show, everyone. It is so good to have you here on the Ignition News. It's my final ask to please make sure that you go follow us on the show on your favorite podcast platform. Let's get into the stories that I think you need to know about. And of course, the first one is the ceasefire. On Tuesday morning, obviously, the president posted this insane post on his Lie Social platform. He said that they would strike civilian infrastructure, and he said that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. We can never forget that he said that. That is an unacceptable thing for any person to say. Think about that. Forget the president. Forget if your neighbor said that. Imagine how you would feel about your neighbor. Iran mobilized to that call by creating literal human chains around power plants, bridges. And for a period of time, it looked as though we were 90 minutes away from a second wave of strikes in a country whose nuclear facilities have apparently already been obliterated. How many of you forgot that apparently we obliterated their nuclear facilities at Fordo? Pakistan, acting as an intermediary, apparently delivered a 10-point proposal from Tehran. They called it a workable basis. The conditions of that would be a 2-week ceasefire on condition that Iran immediately and completely reopens the strait. On this news, oil prices dropped 13% overnight. I'm guessing there was massive trades on the oil markets moments before the president's announcement. I'm guessing there were trillions of dollars worth of trades. Oh, Instagram just ended my feed. I'm not going back live on Instagram. I don't care. So we went to the edge, but we are not back from the edge. We're standing on a 2-week bridge is what's happening right now. By the way, everyone loves to complain about the Obama JCPOA, I think it's called. If I'm getting that wrong, you'll have to forgive me. Where we gave Iran $50 billion of money that was tied up, and then we gave them like another $1.7 billion that they were apparently entitled to because it had been frozen. So $51.7 billion. And everybody loses their mind. Oh, Obama gave them billions of dollars. Look what they did with the billions of dollars. Okay, well now Iran has reopened the Strait of Hormuz, and they're tolling the strait, apparently splitting that toll with Oman, but I haven't really been able to confirm that. $2 million per vessel, 130 vessels per day, $260 million per day in toll charges. That is $95 billion per year. We, these amazing deal makers that we are in the United States of America, we made this deal where a free international waterway is now going to net Iran and Oman $95 billion per year. We're so concerned about them having funding to do these things, to supply their networks, to cause chaos in the region. And so our solution to this was to bomb their infrastructure, attack their leadership, replace it with younger, more radical leadership, and then give them $95 billion a year in tolls. That was our solution. All we need is a battleship and a banner. Mission accomplished. Let's get to the next story. Pam Bondi was fired, as you know, as Attorney General 6 days ago. Today, we learned that she will not, as of yet, be showing up for the congressional deposition scheduled on April 14th. Let's obviously give you a little bit of backstory there. The House Oversight Committee issued a bipartisan subpoena ordering Bondi to testify under oath about the handling of the Epstein files, or we should say the lack of handling under the Epstein files. We know that the Epstein Transparency Act was passed, the president signed that, and that the DOJ had a 30-day deadline to release those materials. They blew past that deadline. There are millions of files that have yet to be redacted. It appears that there is an active conspiracy to hide some of that information. We've obviously previously discussed how by tracking serial numbers on the documents and really just the hyperlinks from the DOJ, you can see that clearly documents are being not just redacted, of course, and that's a whole other issue, that there's obscene redactions, but that documents are just being hidden. And I have a lot of concern about Todd Blanche, the president's personal attorney, who, by the way, said that he loved the president. He said, "I love Donald Trump," yesterday in a press conference. "Whatever the president wants me to do, I will do. I love the president," he said in a press conference. That's the new interim attorney general. That's the man in charge of the Epstein files. It might as well be Houdini, because those files are going to disappear. Now you see them, now you don't. Of course, Epstein spent decades trafficking children for the wealthy and connected. None of those people have been held accountable. He allegedly died in federal custody. But that subpoena is still legally enforceable. And now we have a little bit of a congressional showdown. Pam Bondi is not supposed to go to Congress to talk about what she's going to do. She is supposed to go to talk about what she did. History. You can't erase history. You can try to. But of course, we're watching. Welcome, everybody, to the Ignition News. The next story, by the way, is another story about magic. Your disappearing refund check. Maybe you got a refund. Maybe you didn't. Maybe it was a little bit bigger than last year. Treasury Secretary of the tax code, and here's the actual number. The bottom 95% of American taxpayers are actually paying more in taxes in 2026 than they would have paid if Congress had done if Congress had done nothing. Middle income houses, the average increase is $900 per year. The top 1% is receiving $117 billion in tax cuts in 2026 alone. The average family is going to be paying $900 more per year. And the mechanism behind this is actually not that complicated once you actually peel back the layers. The Big Beautiful Bill extended and expanded corporate tax breaks. It cut out the enhanced premium tax credit. Obviously, we know this is affecting health insurance. And it cut budgetary enforcement for the IRS. Sitting on top of all of that, you have the tariffs. So the Yale Budget Lab calculated that the average American household is absorbing between $650 and $1,300 per year just in tariff costs. Amazon paid 1.4% of its $89 billion in U.S. profits last year. Meta paid 3.6%. Wouldn't it be nice to pay 3.6% taxes? Wouldn't that be lovely? Palantir paid nothing on their $7.2 billion in profits. Four companies who stood with Trump at his inauguration collectively received $51 billion in federal tax breaks and paid an effective tax rate of 4.9%. Do you pay 4.9% in taxes? Do you pay that? Of course you don't. You probably pay 22 to 27% in taxes. And the refund you got was a one-time artifact. That artifact is just the tax tables not catching up to the new tax code. So you got a bigger refund check to convince you that this was all worth it, while Bezos and Zuck, Musk, 1%, 3.9%, 4.9%, or nothing if you're Palantir. Imagine that. $7.2 billion and not a penny in taxes. How wonderful. How fair. And now, breaking news on the show, I wanted to let you know that there are reports, by the way, that Iran has actually once again closed the Strait of Hormuz because of Israeli action in Lebanon. And Lebanon is the biggest untold story of this entire conflict. As of my reporting, as of the last time I checked, they have seized approximately 10% of Lebanon. Engaged in a military conflict for what purpose? To take land. Look at what happened in Gaza. One of the greatest untold stories right now is Lebanon. And we have to take it seriously. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. How do these stories all tie together? Well, we're living in a system that has decided at every level that the people at the top are entitled to protections that you're just not entitled to. You have the president threatening to destroy an entire civilization. You have Pam Bondi trying to get out of a legal congressional subpoena. You have a trick cards for your tax returns. And you have a ceasefire that is predicated on the actions of a country that has proven that it's not capable of good faith ceasefires. But we started the show with a lesson, and the lesson remains. This is not a one-day affair or a one-year affair. This is not a 10-year effort for liberation. We are waking more and more people up every single day. We are teaching them. Sometimes we teach them like my son learned. My son learned from failure. He learned a lesson he could only learn through failing when he's trying to print these 3D whistles. He learned that if you take shortcuts, not only do you lose everything, which he did, but you have to start all over again. This time, 2.5 hours behind. He said to me, "Dad, what if they leave me a bad review?" I said, "Well, that is what happens when you take shortcuts, buddy." But of course, the consequence of the shortcuts being taken by the billionaires and the United States government is not a bad review for a safety whistle. It's literal life and death for millions of people. My question, I imagine Tubman would ask this question before anyone ever joined. You know, you're sitting there assessing who has the courage and capacity for freedom. And that's really the ultimate question, is it not? When she is in the dark trying to find people willing to break free of the plantation, she has to assess in the moment, is this person going to have the strength to take this journey? That is a question we all have to ask right now. Every single one of us. Do we actually want freedom? Do we actually want liberation? Do we actually deserve a country where all of this is possible? Well, I know the answer for me. The question is, what is the answer for you? Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. It was an excellent show. It's really a pleasure to be here today. As a final reminder, tomorrow's show is recorded, so you're going to want to listen on your favorite podcast platform. I didn't see anyone hop up on the show today. That's okay. Maybe we'll do an after show or something like that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Today's show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. This is April 8th, 2026. Stay lit. There we go. That was wild. One second. Sorry. All right. I want the prices down, don't we all? Robert, now we get to find out if it's really you. We'll hear your voice.
This is really me.
Welcome,
Excellent
friend.
Show.
Oh, I think so too.
Excellent show.
What's new in your world?
It's as some folks know, it's a crazy experience. I won't get too far into it, but I should have hopped up sooner, but I wanted to let folks know that I am now an election worker.